Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite game for the limp, and I'm back with a little bit more of Absolute Victory. I was going to record some painting videos this evening, but unfortunately equipment didn't work, had some technical issues, so not to waste filming time, jumped on over here to do a quick round of Absolute. Remember in our previous video, we had just finished off Pearl Harbor over here. A little task force ended themselves over here, kind of watching some of these islands. So now it is the U.S. turn. All right, so actually, and something I got to show you guys, because now we're going to start moving ground units. We're going to start moving everyone in. Let me grab my little ball of beads here to work with. So much stuff spread everywhere. I can keep track of. And just so much stuff. All right, so because all this stuff is going to basically move around. Not a whole lot's going to happen on this first turn because it is the end of the November-December 1941 turn, and it's only the Pacific that gets to activate. Basically, it's map B here, and parts of A get to activate. So, like here to like here gets to do stuff during this turn. Now, I did not show you guys this on the previous turn, but let me pan over to it where I've got it. Forgive my dresser here. This is the Antarctic map and the weather box. Okay, this really should have gone somewhere else. This should have been on the main maps themselves somewhere. A, B, C, I don't care. Somewhere in the attacker, defender, reserve box, and the current naval round. All of these things really should have been somewhere besides the Antarctic map. But I went ahead and rolled. We got 1, and that tells us what type of weather we're going to be having, and that you find here on your Axis Events booklet. Okay, so it shows us we're operating off of chart 1, and you see all the different stuff listed down. So like rain, snow, fair, monsoon, whatever. If it's like cold, rain and snow are equivalent, or what is it, monsoon or blizzard or equivalent, that type of thing, right? Fair is obviously fair, but right now we're operating mainly in the north subtropical, which is this band, and the north monsoon, which is this band right below it. We've got the southern monsoon down here in Australia. So basically these 3 bands are the ones that we're worrying about, and they're all fair. So continental, where the hell is continental? Temperate is there. Is there continental isn't even on this map? No, okay, look, continental's here. And then it goes over and then it stops. There is no continental here. It goes up. Okay, so right here we go from north subtropical to temperate. So it looks like it's pretty much fair all the way across the board. Unless we get into the Arctic where it's snow, and we're not going to get all the way up there. And Antarctica is fair. So pretty much we've got fair weather all the way across. Now that's going to come into play big time with our pulses here. So let me flip over. I was eyeballing Lan Combat because I figured we are going to have a little bit of that. But just to show you guys the pulse system, and this is something I would have liked to have had on the player aid, just as a reminder. These are all the different pulses you can have. So land march, rail movement, sea lift, which is moving ground units by sea, amphibious assault, which I had thought of that wrong. Okay, when I was talking about it previously, if a land area, even if it's an island, is controlled by one faction, it's still considered an amphibious assault to land troops there, even if you're not landing troops against a defended position. So if the Japanese tried to land like here, that would still be considered an amphibious assault, which they would have to use the special event stuff to do. So we can do that. We can do a garrison pulse, which we're going to do a few of those on this turn, so you guys will see that. But that's essentially creating units that don't move. These old guys here with the G's on them, you can find those all around, but you need a unit in the hex, an actual infantry unit, to create a garrison. So ultimatum, that has to do with events, and then you can do naval movement, naval air raid, submarine pot shot, which we're not even going to get into now because that's like West Coast stuff. realized I was actually still zoomed in a little bit. Okay. And supply raid, which I'll have to look up again. Bug out event. Event has to do with drawing the little event chits. Pass, obviously, is pass. The event chits, again, we're not going to have to worry about here on this first round. But the weather, like I was talking about a second ago, comes into this land movement thing. All right, so each unit, each stack gets 4 movement points, period. Okay, and depending on the weather, not the terrain, just the weather, terrain has no effect on movement point costs. And the way they kind of rationalize that is the fact that yes, there's whatever type of terrain, there's mountain or desert or whatever, but this is covering 2 months of time. So they'll find trails and paths and areas to move across. So the weather is going to play a bigger effect than the terrain per se. So, and they've got things like impassable hexsides to block off areas to kind of slow that down. So fair weather is 1 movement point. Rain or snow would be 2, and then mud or blizzard is 3. So right now, everything's 1 movement point. So that will make this first turn easier to keep track of. And I'm going to have to flip back to combat here in a sec. But I think we're going to start with a garrison pulse right here. Because I got a couple of infantry units, and I've got 1 Filipino unit there. But the Philippine unit can't garrison, but the American units can. So we're going to have them garrison just so I can have some extra defenses here in the Philippines. That's why I've got the counter trays out. And again, I've got the lighting focused more on this side of the map rather than that. That's why it looks a little darker over there, so we can see a little better on this side. Now, my red player aid shows us to do a garrison pulse. We have a little table we got to roll on, and 1 is a failure. The unit just flips. 2, the unit creates the garrison, but it's shattered, so you lose a unit. 3, 4, it has success, and then the unit creating it flips, and then freebie, essentially, you get a free one, and you can continue to go on. Not going to matter for us because I'm not moving any of those guys, but we're going to try to garrison this hex right here just to get ourselves some extra defenses. So, and this we're going to be seeing here in a second. Let me grab my little dice rolly and let's see what we get. Come on. No 1, no 2. No 1, no 2. 4. 4 is decent. I'll take a 4. 4 is a success. Almost a critical success. So we'll set that out of the way. And give me 1 sec. Let me grab a garrison. Okay. So we've got our little garrison unit here. And technically only one of these guys was creating the unit or had to. So only 1 would have to flip. But I'm not going to move any of the rest of them anywhere else. So I'm just going to put the bead over all of them. And I always put garrison units on the bottom because garrison units cannot move. Ever. They will always stay in the hex that they are created or placed in. You will never have a garrison unit part of an attack. All right, so they'll always be a defensive unit. You can voluntarily destroy the garrison units as well. So they're interesting little units, but they always have to be part of an assault too. So if there was an attack and we went to the front, that little player aid we used last time, that garrison unit would have to be part of it. It could not be held in reserve for later. Every garrison unit always has to be part of an attack. And you will only have 1 garrison unit in a hex. So you can't sit there and keep rolling time after time after time and just fill up a hex full of garrison units so you never will fail. You can only have 1 there. Now that is the completion of a pulse back and forth. I know it took a long time because we had so much going on that first video, but that's how this system's going to work. So 1 guy pulses, next guy pulses, back and forth up until both players pass, and then you're done. So now we're back to the Axis or the Japanese, since they're the ones who are mainly doing stuff here. And there's not a whole lot, like I said, going on for them. Mainly, I'm thinking of moving some units down, maybe doing an uncontested amphibious assault here to drop some units in so they can move in later. Because I do believe, if I understand the way this stuff is written as far as the Amphibious Assault, that they could move there. Because there's what's considered 1 hex islands and Guam, like Guam here, that's a 1 hex island. But the Philippines are a string of islands. I believe infantry units can move in between those. Like, it's considered rafting or something. No. See? That's right. There are little arrows there that point. You can travel there, but you can't travel here. So if I wanted to land an opposing force, I could land them here, and it would be an amphibious assault, but I could only land so many. I would have to use one of my events, and I think I've got a handful of events that give me like either 2 or 3 units. Let me peek it real quick. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to drive the Americans out, but like I said, I want to try to go a little easy because there is so much going on. There can be shore bombardment. There can be naval transports, amphibious assaults, all this other stuff. So I'm going to do an amphibious assault. I'm going to spend one of my saved events, and I can use up to 4 units, and that's what I think I'm going to do. That's 2 infantry, a tank, and this general. Do I want to send the general, or do I want to, let's see, send an extra infantry army? We'll send the general. We'll let him go on the attack. And what they're doing is they're doing an amphibious assault against this unoccupied hex here. And like I said, I could do it here against the occupied hex, but if the defending units aren't all completely destroyed or eliminated or retreated, then the attackers, I think, are destroyed. It doesn't go well for them, so that's not good. So we're going to go for the undefended hex, and while yes, it means that they flip and they can't attack this turn, they're still there in the Philippines, and they'll have the advantage, and they'll be able to attack on the next turn and drive the Americans back. So I think that will be a better way for them to go. Because, yeah, if the Americans have to retreat, there's nowhere for them to retreat to. Because if the Japanese did push into here and force them back, they couldn't retreat into that one because that would still be within zone of control. And I don't think there's any arrows here. So, yeah, they would probably get destroyed. I think that's a better bet for them. Now, to do an amphibious assault, they have to start in like supply and a source hex. They definitely have that here because the hex that they started in is a port. You can see that little anchor symbol right there for all those units. So they do have some extra units there to use later on to reinforce with. In fact, I think I've got another event that allows me to land 3 units, but I might push them down into some of these other islands to like gain control. That way the Americans have to recreate the island hopping campaigns. They've already got to do that anyway with these garrisons. So it'll definitely be hard on the Americans to try to take these islands. Maybe they could even push down and land in Australia, because the Australians don't have but 3 units. And the Japanese could give them a run for the money. Now, the Australian unit is better. They're 2 4s. So remember, first number is violence, second number is fortitude. So basically, it's your attack and your defense. And these guys could take more hits than the Japanese, which is kind of counterintuitive. The Japanese stood their ground to the last man. You would think they could take a hell of a lot of hits. All right, anyway, let me stop rambling. All right, so that takes care of them. Now we go back to the Americans, and I think we're going to do a sea lift here. I've got an army stack here in a anchor in a naval port. And remember, all of these ships are stacked up in like the single port here. I've just got them divided out in the stacks that they're going to ship out in to kind of give some coverage. And I think we're going to send an army out to Midway because it is U.S. controlled, but I don't have any units there. And maybe start shipping units out to Midway because, one, that gives me like an air base. All right. So if I can use those units as like a civil air patrol to stop any Japanese incursion, I can send air units out from infantry units here in the sea, which would be another good reason to kind of get control of some of these areas as well. Okay, well, it kind of makes sense why why everyone was fighting over these little islands. They're little floating aircraft carriers. All right, so let's do a sea lift. All right, so we're going to send everyone because you do not need a event to do a sea lift. Let's take this whole stack and we'll move them right here. And there are a couple of generals with them, and I don't care. Let's see, we've got Smith and MacArthur. Maybe I'll leave MacArthur for later, actually, because I want him to survive, just in case they get attacked. So MacArthur can be there later, but Smith is leading the assault. He's here at Midway, and let's put a little bead on him to signify that he is done. All right, so you guys can see now how quickly these pulses can actually start to go. Now, of course, there are going to be some that are tiresome that take a little while to get anything done with, but the majority, you're going to just be moving units here, moving units there. It's not going to take too long. All right, so we're back to the Japanese, and like I said, I was going to move some of their fleets out to sea so they could have kind of a coverage going on. And I did try to split it up so each one of these fleets has an aircraft carrier with it. That way they do have a little zone of patrol around them to help guard. So I think we're going to move this one here out. It's got an aircraft carrier and a couple of battleships. And yes, of course, they've got destroyers and cruisers with them, but those are represented in these counters. They don't have counters that small. Basically, they're not represented at this level of the game. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 will guard in between these islands. That way we got coverage going there, keep the Americans from coming in here to land. And we'll stop them right there. I think that's a good spot. Although, be mindful, I'm not like this huge strategist. I'm not like really good at strategy anyway. So don't take my moves as like the best moves for the game. I'm just kind of moving the pieces on the board and seeing what happens. Now, honestly, I think I'm going to hold back the American fleets for a little bit, not too long, but a round or two or a turn or two rather, until they've built up some more infantry so I can have some Marines, because right now I don't have any Marines to send out, but I will after a production phase happens, because I want to have some Marines to put out here, right? And right now I just don't have enough infantry. This is what I've got, but I need more infantry to kind of hold this area and push in, and especially to absorb the losses, because we're going to have to ding a garrison, small little units as we go. And I don't want to just hang the fleet out to get chopped away by the Japanese. Because like I said, the Japanese, I'm planning on putting like a barrier here as they move their forces down and try to gain control of all of these islands. So I think we'll move this smaller fleet out just as a guard for now. And they're starting from the port right here. And we'll have them move out to cover Midway. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Have them hang right there. And again, like I was saying, I'm doing it with smaller groupings instead of the 6 aircraft carriers and 6 battleships that it can be, because I'm trying to take the advice that the designers put into the game of smaller engagements, or not necessarily smaller engagements, but not having all your ships blown out of the game moment one. So have it last just a little bit longer. Get your pieces moved around the board. So there we go. All right, so we're going to do the same here. Sorry, I tipped down just a little more light because it was looking a little dark for me. And we're going to move this Japanese fleet out to here to cover that set of islands as well. Like I said, I'm trying to kind of make a little line here of coverage that's zoned out, so they're looking after everything. And you guys can see these don't stand out very well, again, on the Japanese counters, but you see how well it stands out. The low beads stand out on all the other counters. And honestly, I don't think I'm doing much else with the U.S. forces. Not on this turn. I want them to build up just a little bit more infantry before I push too hard into the Pacific. The only other thing I've got down here that's allied is Great Britain and Australia, but Great Britain's got some infantry right here, and this is their territory. They're not really just going to abandon it. And the Australians aren't going to leave just yet, not until the Americans are coming in to help as well. So pretty much it's the Japanese, whatever they've got left that they want to push, and then any attacks that they want to do. And I was thinking I was going to have them attack the KMT here because we got a bunch of infantry forces here, right? These guys are spent, so we don't have to worry about them. These are all garrisoned. We could have, see, this army could attack into this hex. I don't even know why I put that army there. Because, well, I mean, maybe if the red guys went anti-Japanese, that would be useful. But with that being a blocked hex side, the KMT units can't go that direction. The Japanese could attack down, split this garrison, and then come back up into them. But I think we'll go for the attack here instead because there's a handful of KMT units. These are like free Chinese. And I want to try to cause them some damage now. What is it, 2 infantry? In a garrison? Yeah, 2 infantry in a garrison. I think we might be able to cause them a little bit of damage because I've got a general. I've got 2 things of infantry. No, I've got a tank. Is that a clear hex? That is a clear hex, which means the tank would have double firepower. So this would be a good time for them to attack. So that would give him 4 firepower. Good chance to do a lot of damage. Yeah, the Japanese forces, sometimes they can do all right, but they don't have a mass load of production just like they did in real life. So you kind of got to be careful of where you're throwing your attacks. But the biggest KMT forces start here and here. If they can cripple this army, then that leaves only 1 set here for them to worry about, and then it would just be mopping up afterwards. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a fight right here. Show you guys what a ground battle actually looks like. Okay, so we're probably going to finish out with this battle since there's a lot going on and a whole lot to explain. Later on, I'm not going to take the time to explain all this stuff since you should have watched, these videos. We'll just go with the battles. Now, I have put all the units to the front from that battle hex. We've got the Japanese units that were there, minus the garrison because it can't attack. We've got the KMT units that were there, plus the garrison because it has to be there. So no units are in the reserve here. You will notice that there are Japanese aircraft involved. And the reason I decided to go ahead and do that was because the KMT didn't have any aircraft. I'm not sure if they can use like American aircraft. I'll have to check that. Since I'm not sure, I'm not going to go with it. So I figured, might as well. This is going to be a short round anyway, so it'd be a good idea to burn through the available bombers to attack, try to save some of the ground infantry. So when you have a situation like this, if they were opposing aircraft, then they would have an air-to-air fight up here to determine who has air superiority and any excess aircraft. So let's say they committed 2 aircraft. Well, 2 of my aircraft would have to go up there to fight theirs, and 2 of mine would still, or 2 of the Japanese rather, would stay down here to bomb and do their thing. So think of it as whatever the excess aircraft are the ones that can bomb and do attack air support when it comes to a ground strike attack. Now, the way this is going to work is that we compare their second number. So you see on this unit, that's a 2. This one, it's a 3. That one's a 2, a 2. Now, the ones that say G, that means good. So you roll 2 dice, and if either one of them are a success, that means it hits. If it says B, instead it's bad, you have to roll 2 dice, and both have to be a success for it to hit. So we compare the strike rating of the aircraft, the ground strike, which is again the second number, against the fortitude of the unit being attacked. So this, they, again, like everything else, you have to attack one each and then double up afterwards. So one aircraft for each one of these guys. And since the fortitude ratings were 3, 4, 3, 3, and it was 2, 3, 2, 2, that's why I lined up the aircraft the way I did. We're going to look at this little airstrike table, the attacker's forces, defender's forces. So we look at the attacker's bomber rating, which is a 2, and we compare it to the fortitude rating, which is a 3. That gives us a 6, which means on a D10 roll, you need a 6 or higher to shatter the army, or in this case, the garrison would be destroyed. And if we bump up 1, 3 against a 4 is also a 6. So it's 6 across the board is what we're looking for here to shatter the army. If all of these guys are wiped out and shattered, then there is no ground combat. So we can go ahead and run this real quick. Let's roll for our first attack here against the garrison. Since he does not have a G, it's just a one-off. Does he get it? Yes, he does. So the garrison is shattered. They are effectively destroyed. And now the rest of them are going to be rolling 2s, and they only, or 2 dice, and they will only need one of them to be a 6 for it to be a hit. Again, since the strike table is the same result for all of them. So hopefully one of them will survive so we can show the land combat, and if not, we'll have to do it on another attack. All right, so first roll. 9, got it. The leader is shattered. He goes to the shattered remnant box. Next one, bing, bing, straight up to the top. Does he get it? 10, he does get it. And you can see why that good rating right there makes such a huge difference. The aircraft are going to wipe them all out. All right, last attack. 7, yeah, he got it. 7 and a 6. Boom, they wipe them all out to a man. They were all shattered, with the exception of the garrison, which is destroyed. You can think of a garrison as a one-step unit, effectively. Now, these airstrikes, these all go to the spent box. So the X's committed box. Once you spend an aircraft, it's done for the round or the turn, and after the turn ends, then they get moved back up. You see, there's a whole lot of aircraft to keep track of. And then I try to divide them out into like fighters and bombers so I know which ones to send in which direction after which targets. These boxes definitely could have been a little bit damn bigger. All right, and just so I could show you guys really quickly what a land combat is like, because I am going to end the video after this. So we have an example unit on each side. The violence number is on the left. The fortitude number is on the right. So 4-2 and a 1-3 unit. We have a land mode grid. This thing looks complicated. It's not horribly complicated. Now, this is the part that makes soloing this game very much a pain in the ass, okay? Just being blunt with you. Because the defender or the attacker is going to pick a mode of attack. There are a handful of shits. So you would pick one as the attacker and the defender would pick one, and it's the type of attack that you're going to do. And then you're going to cross-reference that on this chart. Okay, so I'm actually going to have to change this up. I am going to have to roll a die on this because it's 1, 2, 3, 4 to 7, 8 to 9, and 10 on which one that they're going to choose. So the counters, it won't work for me. I was going to have a little system set up for it, but we'll do it a different way. My apologies. So let's get back to it. That's the way you're going to handle that. All right. So you roll a die, determine what defense mode that you're going to be using, and you do that after you select yours. For ease of example, let's say we picked normal attack as the attack, and we rolled a 4 to a 7 and got balanced defense. You cross-reference it. We see this is the result. It's the most basic result, right? Violence number is 3/4. That's attacker, defender. You're always going to read it attacker, defender. And generally, it's always better for the defender because it is a little easier to defend than it is to attack. And depending on what attack and what defense is chosen, there are some attacks that do really well against some defenses and vice versa, right? So some of these, the result isn't simultaneous. Sometimes, like in balanced defense versus blitzkrieg, the defender gets to fire first, right? Makes all the difference. But you're going to look at that. So our violence number is 3, 4. Our Japanese unit here has a violence number of 4. That's how many dice they're going to roll. So the Japanese would roll 4 dice, and they're looking to equal or under. So in this one, you're not wanting to meet or beat. You're wanting to meet or go under the violence number shown, and those are your hits. So just as our example, let's say that 3 was the violence number for this Japanese unit. We'd roll the 4 dice, and he overrolled all of them. Didn't get a 3 or under on any of them. The defender has a violence number of 4. So they would roll their number, which is 1. Roll single die. Hey, they got a single hit. Boom. It's going to be resolved simultaneously. Retreat times 2. We'll get into that later, but that's basically how many hexes you're going to have to retreat. A flips on hits means the attacker will flip on hits. It could be the defender, could be attacker. So this one, the attacker does get hit. They have a single hit. Now, this is where your fortitude number is going to come into play. And the easy way to think about it is up to a unit's fortitude number, they can absorb that many hits and become shattered. And they go in the shattered remnants box. Remember, a shattered unit can be brought back easier than a new unit. And a unit can absorb up to double its fortitude number and be killed. All right, so this Japanese unit could absorb 2 hits and become shattered, or it could absorb up to 4 hits and become killed. So they would have to be built again, or this general couldn't, but if it were a generic infantry unit, it could be built again later on. For our KMT unit, same thing. It could absorb up to 3 hits and be shattered, up to 6 hits and be killed. So if you have a stack of units across the board, it's going to behoove you to absorb hits in certain ways to mitigate as much of the damage to your units as possible. The only thing is you can't have remaining hits that you can absorb to cause damage elsewhere. In this case, a single hit isn't going to cause any damage to them because that's not going to be enough to shatter them, right? They need at least 2 to become shattered. But if there was another unit there that only had a 1 fortitude, you couldn't try to say, put the 1 hit on the Japanese unit and say, oh, well, that's where I'm going to absorb that hit, so it doesn't do anything. If you can take a hit to have something happen, you have to take that hit. So you can't try to spread it around to say, oh, well, none of my units ended up getting enough to get shattered because they all took only a couple of hits or 3 hits or whatever it is. Basically, you have to take as much damage as you can take, but you can kind of waive the remainders that aren't enough to do anything substantial like kill or shatter a unit. That's a real dumbed down version of combat. It gets a lot more intense later on. Like I said, we're going to have issues with amphibious assaults where we have shore bombardment first that can potentially kill units, then air-to-air combat, then the remaining air units doing the TAC air, it's TAC, attack against the ground units, so ground air support, possibly wiping out all the ground units, and then the remaining units being part of combat off of this chart. All right, so this right here is what I was talking about, where the game gets very, very fiddly, very unwieldy for many types of players. If you are the type of player that wants something more than just a CRT and rolling on the table, right? So plenty of games have stuff like your airstrike table, and you compare this number to this number, roll, whatever hits, that's blah, 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 and then you retreat, okay? Very standard way of playing the game. If that bores you and you want something different, this could be something you want to try. You want to look at this, right? But if you've already zoned out and what I'm showing you already, then this one's a pass for you, right? I think probably most people know by this point whether or not this game's going to be something they're really going to get into and really sink their teeth into it, or if it's going to be something that you're going to pass on. the big thing is going to come down to this combat system. If you like the idea of this front and you're cool with the idea of this attack and defense mode, I think this is better when it comes to a multiplayer game versus a solitaire game, since we are having to roll to determine what's going on when you have two players trying to outthink each other. Like, okay, which way is he trying to go? Is he trying to blitzkrieg me? Maybe he is. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's trying to have a fighting retreat. You know, whatever the case is, this is something that I think would work really well when you've got multiple players and they're trying to outthink their opponent. Solitaire works okay. It's not the best when it comes to solitaire, but it does get the job done. This is the big thing that you got to understand, though. That's going to make or break this game for you. This chart and this chart. Okay, so I've been recording for a while. I got a lot of raw footage I've got to go over, but not too bad. Into our round here, I might do a couple more things off screen, but I think we're probably going to end 1941 here because there's just not a whole lot going on, and I want to get into the game proper with the beginning of 1942 where we can have the entirety of the game really kicking off. I just wanted to kind of use this first round to show you a little bit. One of the things I am going to do is I am going to look to see if I can do an amphibious assault here into the Netherlands, because I know this is a surrender city here, right? So this is like a capture point, and I'm wondering if I can like knock out this capture point and like capture this whole area here for the Japanese if I send these guys on like an amphibious assault down around to here and see if they can just take control of this port and this whole area. I'm not entirely sure on how that would work. I need to see if there's other units involved or how that's written in the rules, but I do think that the Japanese can do that and kind of like wipe out the Dutch on this, since they don't have anything left in Europe. The Germans have already wiped them out at this point. But yeah, I'm going to play the final few moves off camera. There's not going to be a whole lot going on up here or much more in the Pacific. That's really going to kick off into the next term when we really get stuck in with some naval combat and in some amphibious assaults that should be granted to us by our event chits that are up there. And we should have some extra infantry units to use as well. You guys stay tuned for that. Like I said, feel free to put your comments or questions down below. I will answer them to the best of my ability. You guys take care. I'll see you in the next one.